Hello there my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make these adorable wirework presents. So we're just using cued beads, wrapping them with wire and then putting a little bow on top. And you can use them for anything like bracelets, earrings or even charms. And of course they're perfect to give as presents as well, so basically you're giving a present as a present, whether that's for Christmas, birthday or anything else. Now these will also be available for sale in my shop, you can find them down below the video. Otherwise, if you want to learn how to make these for yourself or someone else, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we'll need. Now I'm using a regular round silver coated copper wire and the gauge is a 0.6mm, and this is the only wire we're going to need. And then of course we'll need the presents that we're going to wrap. So for that I'm using some cued beads. And these specific ones are 6mm, but you can of course use different sizes. All you need to make sure of is that regardless what beads you use, the holes are large enough to take your wire through 3 times. And then of course we need findings as well, so I'm using a lobster claw clasp, an extended chain and a few jump rings to put it together because I'm going to be turning these into a bracelet. But of course just use whatever findings you need for yours. And then we also just need a couple of tools. So first of all I got flush cutters to help cut the wire, chain nose and tweeze nose pliers to help manipulate the wire and for the jump rings. And then I'm using a pair of 6-step bell making pliers for the loops we need to make. Of course you can also use round nose pliers for this. So you can check out the description box below the video for the material list and useful links. Otherwise, let's get it all ready and let's get started. Now as for the wire, we need to cut 2 lengths of a 0.6mm of about 20 centimeters each, and just make sure there's no kinks or bends in it. And also remember, if you're using larger beads, you can always use longer lengths. So I'm going to start grabbing one of the lengths of wire, and then of course the present that we want to wrap, so the bead. Then I'm just going to put the bead onto the length of wire and just bring it up the end a bit, just so we have enough of a length on this end to make a wrap loop and a bit more. And then I'm going to take the other end here, so the longer one, and start pushing it against the bead. So start basically doing the wrap. So first of all I'm going to push it tight against the side where it's coming out from, and you can just keep rotating how you hold it. And then I'm going to push it tight against the side so it's now coming up in the direction of the other end. And then I'm just going to hold on to that while I then take the end of that length and bring it down through the hole all the way through like that. And then as I'm pulling it, I just want to make sure that I'm holding it tight against the bead so it's not going to move out of the way. And then pull it all the way through nice and tight. Now what I personally like to do is, because you'll probably find that the wire is not completely flush against the bead there, so to get it as tight as possible, I just take my pliers and push it flat against the side. And I also like to just tighten up the top and the bottom there until it's as flat and tight against the bead as you can get it. So we now have a wire wrapped around one side of the bead, and then I'm going to take the same length here, do the same thing but go in the opposite direction. So completely opposite to the first one, but again bring it up the side, push it against the bead, and then get the end of the wire, bring it down through the hole in the bead, same as before. So just push it all the way through so it comes out on the other end there. And if you find that it can be a bit tight, it's always helpful to use a pair of pliers and grab onto the wire and help push it, because you can get a much better grip than you can with your fingers. And of course you can also grab onto the other end when it's coming out and then start pulling. But then otherwise, again, I'm going to hold on to the wire that's on the side of the bead, and then otherwise start pulling the rest of it through until it's nice and tight all the way around like this as well. So that's now wrapped around 2 sides of the bead and they're opposite each other. Of course, at any point you can always tighten them around the bead there using your pliers, just like I showed you before. But then from there I'm going to swap to the other end, so that's the end we left in the beginning, that we just have enough to basically make a wrap loop and a bit extra. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. So to make the wrap loop, first of all I'm going to take my pliers and just put them a little bit above where the bead is coming out from the hole, so we have a little bit of space there, and then put a bend into it about 90 degrees. And I'm doing it so it's coming right in between in the opposite direction then the 2 wires going around the sides there. Then I grab my 6-step bell making pliers or your round nose pliers, whatever you have handy, and I'm using the smallest step in this case. Place them onto the bend there and then bring the wire all the way around to make a circle that looks something like that. Then I'm going to take my pliers, grab onto the circle there so it stays in place and holds its shape, while I'm then taking the end here, wrapping it underneath the circle so it gets fastened in place. And we're filling in that little gap that we left. So just until you don't have any more space to wrap around. And then just going to make sure that the wire is coming out to one of the sides that don't have the wire wrapped around, because I'm then going to use this length here to basically finish off the wrapping around the bead. So I'm going to go around the side of the bead here that hasn't got a wrap yet. Again, make sure to push it tight and bring it all the way up to the top. And in this case, just go on one side of the wire that's coming out from the bead there and just place the wire right in between the other two lengths. Continue all the way around. Again, making sure we're pushing this nice and tight against the side of the bead. And then on the other end here, we've basically completed the wrap around the bead, but we just need to fasten this wire in place. So to do that, I'm just going to wrap it around the first set of wraps that we did to tighten that wrap loop. So basically wrapping on top of them until it's nice and fastened. Then you can go in and cut off the excess like that and get rid of that end. And of course you just want to make sure you squeeze down the end of the wire. So we've now made our wrap loop on the one end there, and we've also basically wrapped the bead completely all the way around. Now what we need to do is just add the bow on the top, and then of course also make a wrap loop on the top part so we can actually attach it on both ends. And to do that, we then need to grab the other length of wire. So we need to basically make the bow separately first of all. So at about the midpoint, I'm going to kind of just hold on to that while I bring one end back in towards the middle over the top of itself and just create a little bit of a teardrop shape here. And of course, the size you make this teardrop shape will end up determining how large the bow is going to be. So you can obviously make it larger if you have larger beads, or smaller if you have smaller beads. So that's the loop on one side. I'm then going to grab the middle again and then take the wire on the other side and do the exact same thing. Bring it around to form that teardrop shape, bring it over the top of itself, and in this case also over the top of the other length that we brought over before, and basically make the other side of the bow and just try and get the two sides to match, so we end up with something that looks a bit like this. So you can see the wires are also crossing there in front of the bow that we just made. Then I'm going to grab onto the two teardrop shapes with my fingers here, hold them in place, while I then push these ends down so they come straight out behind the bow like this. Because then I'm going to grab my crescent again, and I'm just going to then feed the wire in between those two lengths that we just pushed back, and then we can just have a look and see we're going to end up with something a bit like this. Obviously it's not finished yet, but we then need to kind of fasten this bow in place. So you can do this a little bit further up the wire where there's a little bit more space rather than working all the way down by the bead. And I'm going to grab first of all the left length here that's coming out towards the back. So that's on the left side of my wire. I'm going to grab it, bring it over the other length there, but then behind the wire that's attached to the bead and around the side of it, down between the two teardrop shapes, over the front there, and back out to the left side. And then again, just all the way back out to basically where it was. So again, from the left side there, we're going around the back of the wire that's attached to the bead that's running through the bow there, around the side of it, down in front of the bow, and then back out on the side where it's coming from. And then the other one here, we need to basically do the same thing, but obviously opposite, because this is on the right side. So I'm going to bring it around over towards the left, and then around the other side of that wire attached to the bead. Bring that around the front of the bow, and that just crosses over the other wire then. And then back out towards the side where it came from. So we've now kind of fastened the bow more in place here. Of course, this does move up and down the wire, and it can also come off. So if it does that by accident, don't worry about it. You can always place it back on. So just feed that wire through. Now what I then just like to do before I finish this off is just shape these ends into the more ribbon effect there, which will obviously represent the ends of the bow. So again, I'm going to take my 6-step bell making pliers, and just on one side at a time, I'm going to work with the smallest step, place it close to where the wire is crossing underneath there, and then bring it inwards a bit. So we're basically adding a curve into it, and it's changed direction now, so it's coming out the opposite direction there. And then I'm going to grab the wire a bit further out, roll it down. So we're basically having it come from back to front, front to back, while we're adding in these little curves. and repeat. So grab the wire a bit further out, roll it down, and then just push the wire around until it comes in the opposite direction there. And I like to do it about 4 times in total, so it comes back in the direction where it was coming from. But of course you can easily adjust that to how yours looks and what you prefer. But then we have something like that. So you can see it's just kind of a wave effect that we get from that. I'm just going to flip it around and repeat the same thing on the other end. So grab the wire a bit further out, bring it down in the opposite direction, and then grab the wire a bit further out, bring it down in the opposite direction to create that wave effect. And I'm just going to do the same amount on this side as we did on the other side. So we end up with something that looks a bit like this. So right now it's looking a little bit funky, but then what I'm going to do, we might as well do that straight away, is cut off the excess so we get rid of these wires sticking out. I'm just going to cut it kind of in the middle of a curve, so the very last one, and then the same with the other side, and then just get rid of those ends so they're not in the way as we finish this off. And then what I just like to do is just make sure to push the bow all the way tight against the bead right on top there, and then just push these kind of ends of the ribbon that we just made down more around the sides of the bead. Then all that's left to do is finish off the top, so we need to use the remaining of this wire that's coming through and just make another wrap loop. Now this one I like to make in the opposite direction to the first one, so if I connect them together and make a chain, they're going to just fall nicely and all lay in the same direction. So I'm grabbing the wire again just a little bit above where it's coming out from, and then putting a bend into it about 90 degrees, as you can see, like that. And then I'm taking my 6-step bill making pliers again, still using that smallest step, bringing the wire all the way around to create that circle, so like that. Now of course remember, if this is your first one, you can just finish that off, but if you already made a link or you're in the process of making the chain, that you need to attach them together as well. Of course you can do it afterwards using jump rings, but when I can, I prefer to attach them together so they basically stay together and are more secure. So I'm going to grab the ones that I've already made. As you can see, I'm in the process of making a chain. And then I want this top loop that we're making now to be connected to the bottom loop of a previous one that we made. And I want them to sit like this, so I'm just going to follow the path. And that means I need to come through the back of the loop on the previous present I made, bring it all the way up so it then sits in the same direction as you can see, and then just kind of leave that hanging there. Grab your pliers, grab onto the loop, and then it's just a matter of using the remaining of the wire here to wrap below the loop and filling in the gap that we left. And in doing so, as we're getting further down towards the bow, you'll also find that we then can use this to basically make the bow more secure and make it stay how we want it to sit. So basically make sure to wrap down to the point where it makes the bow nice and tight, and as you can see, it doesn't then move anymore. And once you're there, we can just go in, cut off the excess, get rid of that, and then just make sure to push down that end so it's not sticking out and catching or scratching on anything. So just like that. And then I've added another link to my chain. Now something else you can also just do is take a jewelry file and just gently file the ends of the wires there so they become more smooth, so they're not going to catch and scratch. But otherwise you just continue like this, and of course you already then have loops here where you can attach your findings as well. So that's how you make these really cute wirework presents with a bow on top that you can use for many different things. So of course a bracelet, earrings, or even as charms as well. And they are perfect for many different occasions like Christmas, birthdays, and of course anything else you can think of. Or they're just really cute for any time really. And they are also nice and quick to make, so they also make a perfect last minute present. So a present in a present. But like I mentioned, you can find these pieces in my shop if you want to get yourself a little present or two. You'll be able to find that below the video. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.